So when you lose the diversity of the oral microbiome, which is what anthropological studies find, when you take a bit of calcified plaque off of an old jaw, you find a very diverse set of bacteria. It's the same as in gut microbiomes. When you go out, yeah, like when you measure the gut microbiome of the Hadza or Maasai or South American tribes, you find this very diverse set of microbes. And this is speaking to a microbiome population that is balanced. It can, it does have its fast metabolizing bugs, but it also has its microbes that will kind of offset that. And so what we have today is a very undiverse microbiome compared to what before. So we're very susceptible to this sugar. So, when you think about kind of tribes that, honey and, berries, for instance, you don't get that all that often in nature. You don't find it's something that you come across here and there. So these kind of foods were relatively rare, but the people could eat them because they had these diverse microbiomes, and it didn't really affect them metabolically. And the other thing about raw honey too is it's one of the richest sources of certain lactobacillus species. So there's a whole microbiome there
in honey.
Yeah, in honey. Yeah, totally. It's like, so until it's processed. Once you process it, you lose all those microbes.
Right.
So you've got this rich, sugar source, but also too, it's delivered with microbes. Same as raw milk. When you pasteurize milk, you lose all these bacteria that take away that the ability to be able to metabolize the lactose and casein proteins and so forth, which is why probably a lot of people have a lot of issues with milk as well. So there's a very so it's not just sugar, it's this whole context of what we how we metabolize it, how we introduce these bacteria. So lacto-fermented foods, I think, introduce a really good set of these bugs. Meats, fermented meats too, these introduce good bugs as well. The other set of it is that teeth actually have an immune system. So they have cells called odontoblasts, which are very similar to osteoblasts and so forth that make bone. And they sit at the junction of the dental pulp and the dentine. They're kind of sitting there monitoring what's happening, because teeth are like, it's like this big kind of they're called tubules, and it's like this. And so what happens is that there's fluid running up and down the inside of your teeth, and that's when you get a rush of kind of pain, is you get a rush of fluid that kind of that hits the nerve. And so what these odontoblasts are doing is that they're monitoring the bacteria set around the dentine tubules and the enamel rods. And so what happens is when you get certain bacteria kind of coming in, it will actually send out an immune response. And this immune response is run by these three nutrients, A, D, and K2. So when you're deficient in A, D, and K2, you don't have this immune response. And then you start to get this breakdown of this calcium when you're introducing these high carbohydrate foods. So it's this really complex set of problems. And that's why Price found that in people with eating a traditional diet, is that they'll have green plaque all over their teeth, but they didn't have any tooth decay. It's because they're completely immune to decay. And and oral hygiene was kind of introduced in the 30s and 40s, and we haven't been doing this very long. And it's a very superficial approach. And I'm not saying people shouldn't brush their teeth, but you should be thinking about how your body is actually kind of naturally designed to defend this.
And I just showed this picture. I'll show it again. I was looking for odontoblasts. This is certainly not something that I learned in medical school. So you're teaching me, and I'm seeing here the dentin, the enamel, the odontoblasts, and the pulp, also ameloblasts and predentin. But this is the immune system, or pieces of the immune system, that you're describing here, right? And this is the immune system that will respond properly when we have the fat soluble vitamins. Am I understanding this properly?
Exactly. So the dental pulp is like a blood supply. So the chylomicrons carry up all the fat soluble vitamins to the odontoblasts. Odontoblasts have VDR receptors, have vitamin D receptors on them, A receptors as well. They release proteins that are K2 activated. So it's this real kind of trilogy. So when you're deficient in D, your odontoblasts will kind of shrivel, and you won't have that response. So this is the internal kind of immunity that we have to decay if you eat the right things. So you eat organs, and you're going to be immune to decay no matter what.
That's so fascinating, because you always think this, like, I don't think the Hadza brush their teeth. I mean, I don't think they floss. And I love this idea that if we are eating adequate fat-soluble vitamins, there is a built-in defense mechanism in our teeth. This is not saying we shouldn't floss, that we shouldn't brush our teeth, probably because, I mean, I personally don't want green slime on my teeth. It's going to make it hard to walk to the grocery store. Everybody's going to look at me strangely whenever I go, but they don't have decay because there is this innate immune system, or this is probably an adaptive immune system in the teeth. And the story that I always think of is my own. It's that when I was a raw vegan for 7 months, I went to the dentist and they were like, you have 7 cavities. And I thought, how can I have 7 cavities? I'm eating the healthiest diet in the world. And they said, we want to fill these cavities. And I said, no, I don't want you to fill these cavities. And I shortly after that, I stopped being a vegan. I started eating meat again, and I never had problems. And that's the other point that I learned, is that the enamel can be eroded and then can grow back. And that the teeth are living. This is a living structure in your mouth. I think we think of them as rocks in your mouth, but as you're describing, there are immune cells, there's a blood supply, there's chylomicrons coming in the pulp, which are the same as the chylomicrons that are circulating through your bloodstream when the gut, is creating those chylomicrons, and they're being full of triglycerides from your diet. And so those triglycerides, like you said, are carrying, or at least packaged with, some of these fat soluble vitamins. So to think of your teeth as living, and then to think of the fact that all of these living structures in your mouth are so much more able to deal with issues when you have fat soluble vitamins, it really starts to, as you said, kind of elaborate upon this idea of tooth decay. It's not as simple as sugar causes tooth decay. If you don't have an immune system, then if you don't have an immune system in your teeth, if your odontoblasts are not adequate, then sugar is going to worsen your tooth decay. But I mean, the Hads and these other cultures seem to demonstrate just fine teeth eating this occasionally, not at the exclusion of other meats and stuff.